My neighbor wanted to kick me out of the building, but now she's begging to use the pool, which requires my permission. You know when you think everything's going smoothly in your life, and suddenly discover someone's hating you behind your back, without you even knowing why? Yeah. Before all this mess started, I swear I thought my building was the calmest place in the world. I moved here about 3 years ago. I'd just gotten a better job, which allowed me to move out of my old rental and into this condominium that felt like paradise. It had a pool, a party room, a gym. Everything was brand new, the condominium was organized, and the staff was friendly. I almost felt like I was at a resort. For the first few months, my routine was super relaxed. I'd wake up, go to work, come back, say hello to people in the elevator, and sometimes go down for a swim in the pool or just to sunbathe. And most of the neighbors were really nice. Someone would always strike up a conversation in the lobby or comment on building issues, like maintenance, noise, or events. And that's how I met the neighbor who would later become my nightmare. I'll call her Sandra. At first, Sandra seemed super polite. One of those neighbors who smiles all the time, speaks softly, and seems interested in your life, but in a healthy way. She lived 2 floors above me alone, but she was always saying that her husband was traveling for work and was almost never home. At first, I even found her funny. She was a bit gossipy, yes, but nothing that bothered me. Sometimes, when we passed each other in the elevator, she'd come up with conversations. Boy, have you seen the leak in Block B? They say it's going to be a real pain. Or, did you notice that Dona Teresa is leaving the trash outside the door? That attracts cockroaches, yikes. I, polite, smiled, responded with 2 or 3 comments, and went on with my life. I'm not much for getting involved in other people's business, you know? But, over time, I began to realize that Sandra wasn't just an informed neighbor. She paid close attention to everything. She knew who arrived, who left, what time, who parked in which spot, who had guests. One day, I went down to the concierge to pick up a package, and she appeared out of nowhere, saying, "Oh, it's that big box that came for you, right?" I saw the concierge carrying it. "What's it? New furniture? Did you move the sofa?" I thought it was intrusive, but I still tried to play it cool. I replied that it was just some kitchen items I'd bought on sale. She laughed, said she was just curious, and that was it. Despite these small intrusions, nothing seemed serious enough to become a problem. And, for almost a year, our coexistence was peaceful. Sandra even organized community coffees in the party room, where each resident brought something. And, to maintain the neighborly goodwill, I joined in. It was nice, I confess. We exchanged recipes, talked about TV shows, and laughed at the old building manager's quirks. But even during these get-togethers, I noticed she always had something sharp to say about someone. Like, so-and-so says she goes to the gym, but I never see her there. She probably just takes pictures to post. Or, you know Dona Nide's husband? They say he's always traveling because he has another family in another city. She was that person who, smiling, exuded venom. And I began to realize that when she spoke ill of so many people, it was only a matter of time before she'd come up with something against me too. But I hadn't given her any reason yet. At least, I didn't think so. Another curious detail is that Sandra was always saying she wanted to join the condominium board. She seemed obsessed with knowing everything that was decided at the meetings. Once, I saw her standing at the door of the living room, trying to listen in on a meeting that was only for board members. But until then, I thought it was just her curious nature. And it was in this atmosphere, between apparent peace and small niggles, that life went on. I enjoyed my time, used the pool whenever I could, and stayed out of trouble. And I never imagined that the same neighbor who'd chatted me up in the elevator, smiling, would try to kick me out of the building shortly after. The calm was just superficial. Everything was about to turn upside down. I remember as if it were yesterday the day I realized Sandra wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was literally declaring war on me. And the craziest thing, for a reason so stupid that I still have trouble believing it. It all started on a Saturday afternoon. I'd gone down to the pool to cool off. It was unbearably hot, and I brought 2 friends with me. We stayed there talking, laughing, without loud music or making a fuss. When we went upstairs, I came face to face with Sandra standing in the hallway, arms crossed, her expression grim. She approached me with that fake smile, but her tone was pure venom. "Wow, do you think it's okay to bring people from outside to use the pool? This is a condominium, not a club, okay?" At the time, I was speechless. Especially since the rules allowed visitors. Each resident could bring up to 3 people. And I never went beyond that. I tried to explain. "Sandra, it's okay, the rules allow it. The building manager already said so." But she interrupted me, already speaking loudly. "Oh, but that bothers the neighbors. People who don't live here are using the things we pay for. Everything gets full and dirty. It's not right." I saw there was no point in arguing, so I said good afternoon and went inside. But I could already sense the tense atmosphere. And from then on, it went downhill. The next day, a rumor started circulating in the building that I was always hosting parties at the pool. A neighbor stopped me in the elevator and blurted out, "Look, I don't want to get involved, but they're saying you make a racket and leave everything dirty down there." I was outraged. I never left a mess. I never made a mess. I even spoke to the building manager, who reassured me and said I was within the rules. But Sandra didn't stop there. She started poking me everywhere. I'd send indirect messages in the condominiums groups, like, "Some people think they live in a resort, bringing guests to use the pool all the time. Remember, this is disrespectful to the residents." People would read it, and there was this weird atmosphere, and I could see the sidelong glances. The worst part was that some started to think I was the troublemaker in the building. And I, who had always been discreet, started to feel embarrassed even going down to the pool alone. One day, during a meeting, Sandra asked to speak just to say, "I think we should review the pool rules. Some residents are abusing them, bringing guests every weekend, disturbing the peace of others." Boldly, as if I were a criminal. And worst of all, without saying my name, but looking directly at me as she spoke. I tried to defend myself, but it seemed like everything I said only made her angrier. She made a point of spreading the word that I didn't respect the rules, and even said my behavior was grounds for a fine or, believe it or not, for expulsion from the condominium. Yes, expulsion. Sandra went so far as to suggest in the WhatsApp group that residents who don't know how to live in a community should be asked to move out. As if it were that simple. Then I realized, that woman wouldn't rest until she saw the back of me. And all because of 3 friends in the pool. It was surreal. Little did she know that life would turn around. And quickly. Because what happened next put everything in my hands. But that is a story for the next chapter. If someone had told me back then that I would one day become the building manager, I would have laughed. I've always been the type who prefers to keep to myself, not get into trouble. But after everything Sandra started up to, I realized that if I didn't do anything, I would end up being swallowed up in her gossip. The final straw was a condominium meeting, where she once again brought up the subject of my alleged pool parties. Only this time, she presented a petition, full of signatures from residents who, she said, were uncomfortable with me. The document was full of exaggerations. It said I crowded the pool, that I left trash lying around, that I caused excessive noise. But many of the people who signed it didn't even know what it was about. I later discovered that Sandra was going door to door telling a bunch of lies just to garner support. At that same meeting, the then condominium manager, Mr. Arnoldo, announced he was resigning due to health problems. And there, amidst the chaos, a buzz began to emerge. Someone has to take over until the next election. And out of nowhere, Donna Nide, the same one who had already argued that I didn't make any mess, raised her hand and said, "I think my name should be the building manager. He's polite, always participates in meetings, and has never caused any trouble here." I was speechless. Sandra's eyes widened, as if she'd been slapped in the face. She tried to argue. "Imagine. He's the one who brings the most people from outside into the building. He doesn't have the profile to be a building manager. But there, it seemed the neighborhood had grown tired of her vitriol. People started arguing that I deserved a chance. They said that if I were the building manager, at least there would be dialogue, something that didn't exist with Sandra. And so it was that, in a lightning-fast vote, I was elected interim building manager until the next meeting. I didn't even really know what a building manager did, but I accepted. Because, honestly, I realized it was the only way to protect myself. In the following days, I immersed myself in the condominium's bylaws. I read everything: rights, responsibilities, pool usage rules, number of visitors allowed. I even discovered several flaws that no one respected but that had never been monitored. One of the first things I did as building manager was organize the pool reservation list. Now, anyone who wanted to bring guests had to schedule in advance to avoid overcrowding. And who was the first to show up wanting to reserve? Sandra herself. I almost laughed when she texted me. "Hi, my name. How are you? So, I'm thinking about having afternoon tea by the pool on Saturday. It would be about 8 friends. Can I book 8 people?" The limit was 3. I looked at my phone screen and thought, "See how this is going?" I replied politely, of course. I said I couldn't authorize it, unfortunately, because the rules were clear. She persisted, trying to make small talk, all sweet, as if nothing had happened. But I stood my ground. And, for the first time since I'd entered that building, I felt in control. Because now the one who needed to talk to me, even to use the pool, was her. But the best was yet to come. Because her humiliation didn't end there. In the next chapter, I'll tell you how she practically had to beg me. And my answer? Well, you'll want to know that one. Life has a sharp sense of humor. And, in this case, it was almost theatrical. The woman who tried to kick me out of the building was now standing before me, smiling awkwardly, trying to convince me to let her use the very space she herself had tried to ban me from. It was the beginning of summer, and the building, as always, was packed on weekends. The pool was the most popular spot, and since I took over as building manager, I'd implemented clear rules. A maximum of 3 visitors per apartment, advanced scheduling, controlled hours, respectful shared use. It didn't take long for most residents to notice that things had improved. No mess, everything was more organized. Except for one person. Yes, her. Sandra. She remained silent for a long time after my initial refusal to have afternoon tea with 8 friends. But then came the event that turned everything upside down. Her daughter, who lived in another city, was coming to spend the holidays with her 2 young grandchildren. And where did the children want to play? Exactly, the pool. On Friday, late afternoon, I was returning from the market with some bags when I heard someone calling me in the parking lot. It was her, Sandra, walking quickly toward me with a smile so forced it was pitiful. "Hi, my name. So good to see you. Is everything okay?" she said, with that sweet, almost sugary intonation. "Everything's great. And you?" I replied dryly. She paused awkwardly, adjusted her glasses, and smiled again. "So, I was wondering if you could let me use the pool tomorrow. Only my daughter and grandchildren are coming. They're so excited." She sounded childish, as if speaking to a child. I stared at her, saying nothing for a few seconds. This was the same woman who months earlier had called me a freeloader, who had spread the word that I was rude, who was trying to tarnish my reputation among the residents. And now she depended on my permission to let her grandchildren have fun. I said calmly, "Sure, Sandra. You can use the pool with them. But you need to make a reservation. How many people are coming exactly?" She hesitated. "Oh, just my daughter and the 2 grandchildren. I thought about bringing the nanny too, because one of them is still young. But if it's a problem, I'll leave just the 3 of them." I knew I was trying to skirt the limit. The old-fashioned way. But I remained formal. "The rules allow up to 3 guests, and you'll be there too. So, that would be 4 people." She tried to laugh. "Oh, but come on. They're kids, right? Yeah. And that's why we have rules. Imagine if all the residents brought 4 or 5 guests. The pool would turn into a park. She took a deep breath, swallowed her pride. And then came the most surprising part. Look, I know we've had some disagreements in the past. I exaggerated. Maybe I said too much. But I wanted to apologize. Okay. I never expected to hear that. It was strange. Part of me wanted to accept it, close the cycle, turn the page. But another part remembered everything I'd been through because of her. So, I decided to be fair. Sandra, you can use the pool with up to 3 guests. It's okay. But please follow the rules. I'm doing this for them, not for you. She was visibly embarrassed. She muttered a quiet, thank you, turned, and left. The next day, there she was, with her daughter and grandchildren, all well behaved, smiling forcedly at the neighbors, trying to appear friendly. I watched from the balcony, sipping my coffee, with a calmness that only someone who survived a condominium war can understand. The truth is, the greatest humiliation wasn't the no she almost received. It was the fact that she depended on me, on someone she tried to overthrow, to be able to do something as simple as use the pool with her grandchildren. And you know what? From that moment on, she changed. She never attacked me again, never tried to harm me again. She began to respect boundaries. She didn't become my friend, but she learned that the world changes. Today, every time I look at the pool, I remember that story. And I think, there's no better victory than one that comes without the need for revenge. But I confess, it was hard not to smile at the end.